What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Daily Energy Newsbeat Stand-Up here on this gorgeous December 12th, 2022. As always, I'm your humble correspondent, Michael Tanner, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Dallas, Texas, joined by the executive producer of the show, the purveyor of the show, and the director and publisher of the world's greatest website, EnergyNewsbeat.com, Stuart Turley. My man, how's your weekend?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I spent the whole weekend working. It's unbelievable.
I know you've got this shed project going on, or it's like a micro home. You've got this. You've been doing that for a while. You're about to be done with it. Sounds like.
No, it was raining. I was working on energy news stuff the whole weekend.
Oh, good. Well, we have a great show for everybody lined up today. Stu's got some great articles picked out. First, we're going to dive into a little bit of what gas demand destruction and what's that, and how the renewable energy that is replacing it is not quite holding up as we think. Also, wind turbines, turns out they're only lasting half as long as previously thought. Stu's going to talk about a study that just came out that goes over the signs of wear and tear after just 12 years. We've also going to fly over to Saudi Arabia and cover why what's happening over there might impact oil prices, specifically if Iran decides to get a nuclear weapon. Looks like the Dutch government is closing 3,000 farms to comply with some green agenda. Stu will talk about what that means. The last thing we've got is with countries have the highest inflation rate, and specifically the reason why this is important is because this negatively impacts and increases energy costs, which is one of like the worst things that you can happen around the world, is increasing energy costs as we've experienced here. He'll kick it over to me. I'll cover a little bit what's happening about oil prices. We're trading about 71.92, so not great, but I think the outlook for this week hopefully is a little bit more positive, but I'm not sure the supply and demand numbers will show up, but we'll cover that. Nat gas seems to be spiking a little bit. We closed at about 620 last weekend, and hopefully we can see some of the fundamentals turn around. We'll cover what the EIA is going to cover in a third in a draw, and then we'll fly over domestically and talk a little bit about what PDC is doing. They've just approved something in Colorado that I had the pleasure of working on, so we will cover that. And then we will get it over to our one big thing, guys. But before I kick it over to Stu to start us off with these stories, as always, check us out, www.energynewsbeat.com, the world's greatest place for all of your energy news. Stu does a great job of covering everything international that you need to worry about that's going on in the energy space. And again, you can check out all the links in the bio. We appreciate the support and all the feedback we've been getting. So again, thank you for that. All right, Stu, enough of the pleasantries. Where do you want to start? You've got some doozies for us.
This has been just a great week for working for just a bunch of great things for Sandstone. But President Xi from China has made a great run through to Saudi Arabia and then off to Iran. And there's a dispute over in Iran and the UAE, United Arab Emirates, about an island. And so President Xi, I can't speak Chinese, and they were sitting there in Saudi Arabia, and they have formed some new financial bonds. Those financial bonds are being kicked into more of the BRICS, and Egypt is also now trying to get into it. So Saudi, anyway, that whole thing. That being said, China is now off to Iran. After that, he stopped in Iran and he was talking to them about the nuclear deal. So Biden has lost the ability to even talk to them about the nuclear deal. China is actually coming in and talking about putting in a new nuclear deal. They're then trying to negotiate a deal between the UAE and Iran. All of this is a hotbed for oil and gas prices. But the real critical thing is Saudi Arabia, which they just left, says, sorry, if you don't get this deal over here with Iran, all bets with everything that we have are off. So my hat's off to, I'm not fond of him, but he is going around trying to make peace around the world. I got to hand it to him, even though it's self-interest for him. What do you think?
Yeah, this is again, more in your territory, but I love this quote from here. If Iran gets an operational nuclear weapon, all bets are off. It's not a good quote. It's not a good quote, Stu.
You have to hand it to the Chinese. I'm not a fan of the CCP, but on the other hand, they're doing what we should be doing, and that is taking a leadership role. And anyway, all right, enough with that. I got tickled at this one, and Michael, when I put this one out there, it is, I don't get this, and I really truly want to ask people on every story, Michael, that you and I cover. I'm putting the form down below the article. So if you go down to the article, you can see that there's a form in there for the daily stand-up. I want people to ask us questions, give us feedback on any of the stories that we talk about on the daily show, because I want to know. I'm getting some great feedback on these things, but I want to know what our daily show folks get. This story, Michael, is the Dutch government attempts to forcibly close 3,000 farms to comply with green agenda. Is this designed to lower the population? I was like, holy smokes, why are they doing this? And the picture is, how dare you?
Well, first off, we know you love a good conspiracy. So they throw the design to lower the population in there. We know you're a fan.
Oh, absolutely. But as soon as I tagged this out there with the World Economic Forum, it went nuts on our news site. It was just going ballistic.
Yeah.
But why in the world, Michael, why would anybody want to shut down 3,000 farmers? That's the same thing that's happening in the US. If anybody's not paying attention to this, it's going to be the same thing. Cheerios are going to be $95 a Cheerio. Serious. This is the way this is going.
Well, isn't that what was happening in Brazil? They were, quote unquote, cutting down the rainforest, but they were cutting down the rainforest because they were building farms. And that the reason why they were even cutting the Amazon down was a slash. I think back at the old regime, we covered that.
Yes. And the part of the problem was, and we've talked about it, the energy hypocrisy with California. They're taking all the oil out of the rainforest. So we just have to pay attention to this. And what does this mean to energy? It is about the fertilizer. Energy is they're cutting out the fertilizer. But why are they cutting the farms out? They need to be addressing the energy, not the farms. I don't get this.
All
right. Anyway,
how dare you? I love.
Isn't that great on the front of the tractor?
The picture you ran. How dare you?
I'm sorry. That was a fantastic. I'd like to give credit. I want to give a shout out to whoever took that. That was a great one. Okay.
What's next?
All right. We're going to which countries have the highest inflation rate, and how does the cost intensify the negative impact? I put out there, Michael, on some of my other podcasts, and there is a direct correlation with energy producing countries typically or trending to lower inflation rates. That is and so there is a true dichotomy between energy and inflation rate. And so double-digit
energy is one of the largest costs of any human around the world. I mean, I think, I think obviously in the United States, it's a little bit different. We pay probably a little bit more for housing than necessarily we do energy. But again, we're going to cover in this article, that's the robustness of our energy infrastructure. Around the world, people spending a huge amount of their yearly income on just energy in general. So it really hits home, especially when you see some of these countries you're about to cover who are on this list.
Oh, it's unbelievable, Michael. One of the headlines in here was double-digit inflation in 2022. As the table shows, some are even facing triple-digit inflation rates. Zimbabwe, Lebanon, and Venezuela have the highest rates in the world, and Turkey's not far behind them. Now, Venezuela is kind of funny because they say it's an energy-producing country. Well, their entire, as we talked about, I believe it was on our Friday show or Thursday or Friday last week, Venezuela has had their energy destroyed by the socialist government there. And our administration was going to give Chevron 6 months. Well, it's going to take years to rebuild all of that. So
yeah, there's no way
there's
that they restart Chevron can restart oil operations in 6 months
no,
in Venezuela. There's
no,
absolutely zero reason.
no. But if you take a look at these charts, they're unbelievable. Largest producer, first chart is producers of natural gas.
Good old US of A, baby. Love me
Oh
some
yeah.
good, sweet, sweet American natural gas.
Rest of the world is 671 billion cubic meters. The US is 934 billion cubic meters, and Russia is 701 billion cubic meters. I mean, we're the animals. Now, here's the thing. Do you know how much we could save the world in the ecological movement to carbon net zero if we would totally expand out our LNG market? Look at the rest of those countries around the world, Michael. We could help them out a bunch and reduce the carbon footprint. But nobody, I mean, it's just not a renewable. It's we need LNG. The inflation factor here. You love some good charts, man. And there's some good charts in here. Now, the way this fits into that first story with the Dutch is you have the rising global inflation rate, you have a slower global growth, and then number three, you have the rising food insecurity. Yep. And the number one problem with rising food and social unrest is because you have to have energy in order to grow food. Well, why are the governments destroying the farms? Anyway, all of these articles tie in together, and it's just unbelievable how they do.
Yeah, so, rising food prices are are helped by rising energy prices, because there's a lot of energy production that goes into creating fertilizer, which is a key input into the global agriculture game. I think I covered this the one day you were gone, Stu, on my little solo show, that was access to fertilizer specifically out of Ukraine and Russia because of this war right now has basically been non-existent, and Africa is starving right now. It's like this, I guess it's this unsung little thing that's going on. So they were finally able to get a couple shipments of fertilizer out, but it's absolutely, when the price of fertilizer goes up, food goes wildly expensive. And as energy prices rise, fertilizer costs rise. It's the supply chain. It's got it all written all over it, unfortunately.
Yeah. This one line in here just is frightening as a statement of fact. If global inflation rates, which hover around 9.8% in 2022, were to follow this course, it would take at least until 2025 in order to reach the 2% target. Holy smokes. Now, what that means to people is buckle up. 2023 in the US is going to be tough. 2023 in the UK is going to be miserable. 2023 in Turkey is going to be get a stick and just poke it in your foot. So we got some tough times coming around the world, and people go to war over oil. They're going to go to war over food even quicker. Okay. Now, here's where this comes in. This next one comes in. When we talk about gas demand, the next article is called Gas Demand Destruction Give Way to More Renewable Energy Development. But what cost, and what do you think? This goes right into that question. I want people's thoughts. Michael, I don't care what kind of power we use. Let's use wind, solar, nuclear, love them all. Let's get the lowest cost kilowatt per hour to all people of the world. Now, when we go into this article, the author of this article, let me go see, this one was picked up from, I can't even find it. I have to, I got to talk to Alan on this because it's not put in there. Anyway, high gas prices, when the original author of this article was talking about the high prices, wherever we're going to look, Michael, the gas demand is going to be in Asia. So in all of the new long-term contracts for the Cheniers of the world, for all of those, we need to look at Tokyo. We need to look at
Yep.
Asia, any of those. There is a starving for that. And one of the things I find amazing is our Canadian brethren, they could own that market if they just turned loose the energy section in Canada. But defunding gas, this was the critical part of the whole article. The IEA, Michael, do you remember when the IEA was out there and they said, we need to have zero funding in energy and oil and gas? Now the EIA has pulled a Scooby moment. Ruh-roh. They're now saying it's okay. Ruh-roh. You need to go ahead and invest in natural gas. So that we're seeing a great resurgence away from the ESG investing movement so that you can invest in oil and gas. Here's the thing. ESG did do some good things. Now, ESG, when it went totally overboard, was bad. BlackRock this past week was thrown out again of some other places, and there's less people being ESG 100%. So that's coming around the corner. That's a goodness for the consumers being less ESG investing. So, okay. All of this ties into you and I talked about, and I want to bring this up because you had some great research in your mind's master's program that when you were going through. We were running articles way back when, a couple of years ago, that the wind farms and all technology was not being calculated correctly in the renewable pricing. Wind turbines, the title of this one is Wind Turbines Only Lasting for Half as Long as Previous Thought. Study shows they show signs of wearing out just after 12 years. Michael, this was first published in December 31st, 2012.
Yep.
Wow. I was researching all this, and between the mean MTBF, mean time between failure, and when they're worn out, I'm showing down around the 8 to 9 years. I have to validate those numbers, and I'm pulling all those together to write all this stuff up coming up here in the soon.
Because even if it's 8 or 12 years, here's my issue. So we build these models on, modeling, okay, like as we talked about in the last article, the IEA, the International Energy Administration, they say if we want to go carbon neutral by 2050, this is the mix of energy sources that we need to use. And then you can backtrack into, okay, well, how much minerals do you actually need to pull that off? And as you work through that model, one of the key inputs is lifespan of these individual renewable sources. Because think about it, there's you don't necessarily want to know how much minerals are going to be used to create a wind farm. You kind of need to know that, but what you really need to know is how much new material, because there's a level of recycling that will go into account. And I can talk for a while about how I think those recycling numbers are wildly inflated, but that's the thing. We're not going to need to pull out if there's 1 million tons of steel, and steel's a bad example because it's not a mineral you get out of the ground. Let's say 1 million tons of aluminum need to come out of the ground in order to supply, say, the total amount of wind. But let's say over the lifetime of a wind farm, we can recycle it, reuse some of that aluminum. So we don't actually need 1 million tons from the ground. We may only need, say, 600,000 tons or whatever the number be. That's a bad example because the numbers are huge, but you get what I'm saying. So we can talk about the whole recycling factor later. But when it comes to modeling the lifetime, we're using 30 to 40 years. So even if it's 8, 12, 15, we're wild. I remember I built a model that had these numbers, and I remember typing in like, this just seems off. Like not even an oil and gas well's online for 30 years, like not even, a refinery release. I mean, refineries are different, but they're not retrofitted. They do last longer. So I get that. But even in, the comparable something to a wind farm is a gas well. And even there, they're 20 years at max. So not at max, but the average well is only going 15, 20 years. So it cracks me up when I see this, because it's, regardless of whether or not it's 8, 12, 15, the modeling that goes into building these cash flow models, which I know a little bit about, is you're wildly off in your assumptions. So,
well, one of the key things is I don't care if we use wind. I don't care if we use solar. I can't say that enough. I love me some nuclear, but let's take France.
We know you love some hydro.
I love me some hydro. Got it right over here. But when you sit here and say nuclear, France did not put any money back into their nuclear fleet, and they are only able to run half of their 45. Half of their 45 nukes they can run because they took all the money that they were putting into maintenance and putting those to renewables. Wow. So, you got to have a plan. And that's where I think we're about to have a great awakening in 2023 and 2024. I'm hopeful that there's enough intelligent conversations about solutions that we're going to move forward in both a fossil, renewable, and nuclear future. I'm hopeful.
They're all going to have to dance together in order for this to work.
Absolutely, Michael. So in all of these articles, we have the forums at the bottom of them. Please, I want everybody to go give us feedback. I'm enjoying the feedback. I have been on social media. I'm being just blasted by some folks. It's so much fun. I love being blasted by folks. And then I say, do you want
someone needs to clip that? So, someone just needs to clip that. That's I'm gonna need that clip. Kat, you know what to do. But you got anything else on the story side?
Oh no, this was going to be a very slow week for energy unless something changes with Iran and the UAE, which is kind of hot heating up. The one thing that we are following is the insurance requirements for ships. There's still 15 over hanging out by Turkey. Turkey is standing there kind of looking around going, you can't go through unless you show me insurance. Well, insurance is from all the UK. President Z was in Saudi Arabia in order to work more with BRICS. BRICS is now creating an insurance area for governments to underwrite, so they don't have to go through, and sanctions are going to go away from being able to even be used on energy.
I say this every time, but you're depressingly right all the time. You're right in a depressing way all the time. So, I wish we could.
I want positive.
I know. I'm just kicking you a little bit, and I wish I could be more positive over on the finance side. But as we sit now, time stands at about 6:47 on the 11th. Futures SPY, they're down about 1/4 percentage point. NASDAQ's trading down. So, my guess is when you're listening to this, it's, things are going to be a little bit depressed. Everyone's keying in on Fed Chair Jerome Powell's thoughts. He speaks Wednesday, and we will know whether or not we get a 50 or 75 basis points increase. Right now, the street is sort of expecting, based on comments by Fed Chair Jerome Powell last week, we're expecting the Board of Governors to come out and say 50 basis points. So if we do see a 75 basis points prints do, things are going to go crazy. And that's really what oil prices are going to be hanging on as we move forward this week. The EIA last week said that we had about a 5.2 million barrel crude oil draw from the commercial. We only had about a 2.1 draw from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But I want to bring up real quickly, and Stu, I know we like to make fun of, and I'll be honest, I thought the current administration's idea of selling oil to Strategic Petroleum Reserve was a bad idea. I thought doing it at $93, claiming that they were going to be able to buy it back at $69, was a bad idea. I mean, as we stand right now, I saw word on Friday before I cut out that they're getting ready and have buyers or have basically sellers lined up to fill the strategic petroleum reserve, and we're only $2-3 away from that. So I'll give credit where credit is due. This energy department, actually, in my opinion, they may have struck luck a little bit here with this sale and resale, assuming they actually start buying. Now, if you're a trader like me, you just start buying now. Doesn't matter. You've gotten close enough to your target. Buy now. You've made enough money on the spread to buy. Don't get greedy here. This is when you can get greedy as a trader, and that's right. All this whole strategic petroleum reserve was a trade. That was all it was. It was a big, large trade that the administration undertook, and right now they're winning. So lock in your profits, as we say. But who knows?
The profits. I want accountability where those profits went, because the SPR was at $27 or whatever the price was. Where did that money go? We do know that it was sold to China. 4 million barrels went to China at a reduced price, and then 1 million barrels went to Hunter Biden's company. I want an accountability.
Of course. Well, you'll never see an audit trail, but the trade on the surface looks really good, and the trade on the surface looks good. As far as what nat gas is looking like, again, we're going with the weather models this week. Things are looking in the long-term side. As I sit here, nat gas intel's telling us that really, as long as we're in this sort of choppy forecast for the weather across the lower 48 for the next, really couple weeks, we'll probably see a little bit more choppiness from the natural gas markets. I remember we did see a 21 BCF draw last Thursday from the EIA. And so that will, that's softness. When you talk about the analysts, the range of expectations as we move into draw season are somewhere between 8 and 60. Let's go 20 and 60, really, as we go forward. The more we see these smaller prints do 21, only 21 draw, 22 draw, it's going to really, really hold back prices. Now, on the other side, if we start seeing big prints over 60, we're seeing 70, 80, 90, it's going to be, things could get spicy. And again, I'm looking for Freeport LNG facility, January, February. That thing comes back online. I am of the mindset that is going to, again, be on the bull side for natural gas prices. And it's why I'm still a long-term natural gas bull versus on the oil side. Things are a little bit choppy. So that's sort of my outlook for this week. Nothing too insane, but I do think it's going to be interesting what these two prints are. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up two things. One, we're moving into proxy season. And if you're not familiar what proxies are, it's basically shareholders of public companies. There's a window in which they can basically create new rules for the company from a corporate government side, whether it's from a strategic side, whether it's from a financial side, but it's like a corporate charter that actually gets written into the corporate legal binding document that basically of like the corporate documents is like a mission statement. And so proxy season is a battle between shareholders and management, obviously, and other factions of shareholders. And specifically in the oil and gas business, it's been like this for years, where you have a small minority of what would be considered activist investors who are trying to pull these companies a little bit more renewables. And then you have other players in the game, generally, which are company insiders, and specifically now in the age of energy stock buybacks, these management teams have sort of been able to mass this pretty power. But proxies are a way to basically pull these companies more towards the center. And we saw this all throughout really the late the 2010s, like really, I would say 2016, 2017, 2018 is when proxy season became a real battleground for, ESG disclosures, talking really about emissions, this idea of what's the difference between scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. Scope 1 emissions are your direct emissions from oil and gas output. Scope 2 emissions are second is emissions from things that you supply it. Then scope 3, I'm not too familiar, but the idea is it gets progressively harder down this scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emission value chains. Basically, it's like scope 3 emissions. You sold something and didn't create any carbon. that person, the next person down the chain didn't do anything, but a second person down the road emitted carbon, and that's considered scope 3 emissions. I'm pretty sure someone can quote me on that.
My head
but
just exploded.
It's the idea, and that's where these oil and gas companies are getting required to disclose scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. It gets tough sometimes because there is always going to be emissions down the value chain. The question is, how much are we willing to pay to get rid of those emissions? As an economist, that's all I really think about on a daily basis. Anything can be done. The question is, how much does it cost? And we can get a lot cleaner going to go completely natural gas infrastructure than we can probably doing a huge mix of renewable, because we will always need backup that will be on a dispatch basis. You can't just dispatch wind power or solar power. You kind of get it when you get it when it's available, and it can be very useful in certain situations. Stu's cabin is on a hydro, or is hooked up to hydro. Some of the best. I mean, if you're a Bitcoin miner, you would love to find you a nice cabin in the woods that was hooked up to hydropower, because you're probably paying 2, 3, 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's probably low. It's low, and it's great, but it's hard. Hydropower there's only so many places where you can do it. So you have to just think about it again. As an economist, I think about anything can be done, but how do we optimize the solution in order to maximize the benefits and minimize the costs? So I think that about does it for us. Stu, is there anything else you're looking for this week before we let these people get on their way?
Oh, it's going to be a great week. We're getting ready for some Christmas. I wish everybody a safe and happy holiday season. Merry Christmas. I do say Merry Christmas.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Of course you tell people. You just don't just say Merry Christmas. You tell people you say Merry Christmas. So we appreciate it, guys. We'll let you get out of here. Start your day. Thank you for checking us out here on the Energy News Beat Daily Stand-Up. You can check us out, www.energynewsbeat.com. For Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. See you tomorrow. Today's episode of the Energy News Beat podcast is brought to you by Enverus. The energy industry faces massive challenges every day, and the events over the last 2 years have caused huge disruptions like never before. Companies in the energy industry need actionable intelligence and a single source of truth that brings all the data together. Enverus is the energy specialized technology partner that provides intelligent connections for a global energy ecosystem. Only Enverus has the analytics, people, experience, and industry scope to connect the right data and information in the right way to discover missed opportunities and deliver fast outcomes. Find out more at Enverus.com. That's ENVERUS.com.